Okay, hello, welcome. This is a brief overview of the tools that I use to make VR art. This is not a tutorial, so don't worry about taking notes. In 2015, I got my DK2, and that really opened up my eyes to, oh my gosh, we are in a whole new era of virtual reality now. When I first put on that headset, I was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. This is awesome. I want to create my artwork and be able to go inside of it and fly around inside of it. So basically, like the things I love about VR, working in VR, is scale and being able to fly. Those are like the two things. That's like all I really need. So here's just some clips of some stuff I've been working on over the last couple of years. It's all very abstract sort of stuff. But a lot of the same sort of like mechanics of how kind of moving through the space and stuff. I really like changing the look with like the post-processing and doing these edge detection sort of things, and just making really beautiful paintscapes is what I call them, that you actually get to fly through and stuff. So hey, so how do I approach a piece? Usually I start with tilt brush. Tilt brush, if you're not familiar with it, is a dimensional drawing, volumetric sort of drawing sort of program. Volumetric in the sense that you are drawing in space. And it's really thrilling to be able to draw something that's your stroke, that's your hand stroke, that's got your signature to it, and then scale it up and be able to look at it and have it look the size of like a mountain. And it's just, I can't describe how cool it is. This 2D video just doesn't really do it justice. You actually have to see it in VR. But working in Tilt Brush, I'm layering up layers of colors. I know these are going to kind of be in the background. And actually, some of these I'm actually going to switch out the look of this later in Unity. Unity being the game engine that I'm going to compile all these elements together and kind of make the interactive bits and kind of author it into a VR experience. So in Tilt Brush here, I'm drawing things, but I kind of know in the back of my mind, like, hey, I'm going to be changing that look of that. Okay, I can change that. It looks like a splatter now, but I might change that to something else. So yeah, lots of tools. Once again, not a tutorial about using Tilt Brush, but just kind of this is how I use it. And I'm just adding elements that I know I'm going to be flying around, and these things are going to be huge. This is going to be scaled up really to epic proportions, and I'm going to be able to fly around inside there. So I'm not really even sure what it's going to look like at this point. But real quick, did you know that you can import models as well as images into Tilt Brush? Well, you can. And what I like to use it for is a great Previz tool for just kind of like mocking up a VR concept. Super easy. If you bring in models and image files, you can kind of scale them. I'm using a character here to kind of represent, like, that's me in VR. This is about how tall I am. So yeah, let's say you're working on a sculpture or something in the real world, and you're like, well, how big is this? What's this going to feel like? Or you're making a installation art piece. Just bring in your image files into Tilt Brush. Super easy. Scale things up, move things around, see how it feels to actually be in the space. It's a great way of working. And you can't save this stuff into Unity, but you can save it in Tilt Brush. So you can always come back and kind of look at it in Tilt Brush. But it's a fabulous way of just kind of like blocking out your scenes, or if you're shooting a 360 video and you're like, is that car blocking that, or should it be over here? Because remember, you got to kind of design dimensionally. You got to design in 360 degrees. But Tilt Brush works really great for just mocking up things, and it's super easy. These are just PNG files with transparency on them. Here I am in Medium, Occulus Medium, and I'm sculpting some kind of weird sort of abstract sort of things, the little elements that are going to be in my scene. I didn't end up actually using this in the scene later on, but it kind of shows you what Medium does. I'm kind of making, it kind of looks like toothpaste here, but people do really amazing sculpting with Medium. I'm not really doing it justice here, but you can do 3D printing from Medium. It's really exciting. One of the things I love, though, about it is I love being able to paint in dimensional space, paint onto a mesh It's just so fun to work this way. You can move it around. You can stand up. You can sit down in a chair. Whatever you're doing in the real world, and then you're just drawing in virtual space. It's a great way of working, and it's just really fun to color things in and spin things around. You can import models and paint on them. It's a really fun way of working. The other thing that's kind of fun is drawing with stamps, what they call stamps. So drawing with other meshes. So you can bring in things. In this particular case, I really like this look of kind of how it's all kind of breaking apart with this particular stamp. So I kind of actually liked how it didn't come in all clean. But anyway, so here we are in Quill. So Quill is another sort of... it's not another. It's a fantastic illustrating sort of program on the Occulus on the Rift, and you can make these really beautiful sort of ink sort of drawings or and you can do color. I'm just doing black and white here because I'm going to use these as elements later in my project. What I'm using it for. So don't just think, well, Quill only does black and white. No, you can do color. People do really amazing illustrations with it. And once again, not doing it justice, but this is how I'm using it. I'm just using it to make elements that I'm going to bring into Unity, and all part of my kind of sort of layered sort of look. But I did want to point out that you can actually do animations in Quill. And these you can bring into Unity as well. There's a few hoops to jump through, but just know that you can do it. Doing animations in VR is super exciting to be surrounded by these animations. And one of the things I like to do is load up a bunch of keyframes, hit play, and then draw over the top of it. And it kind of records all your motions. So you can get those really interesting things going on there. Next thing, who knew that drawing 2D elements in VR would be so much fun? Well, it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because drawing 2D elements in the real world is really fun. So why wouldn't it be fun in VR? So here I'm using KingSpray, which is a graffiti simulator. And it's really awesome. They have all these different caps you can use for your spray cans. You can get drips going. Tons of color. If you know what you're doing with, as I don't know what I'm doing, but if you did know what you were doing with spray cans, you can do really amazing artwork. What I'm doing here is just kind of making an element I'm going to use later on in Unity. You can save this file. When you save the file, it comes out as a PNG with transparency. So it's a really fun way of making a 2D element that I'm going to use later on. And it's just fun to draw in life size and using your body to draw. It's a really neat way of working. So I did want to give one last little shout out here to a program called Paint Lab. And Paint Lab is a dimensional drawing program, much like kind of Tilt Brush a little bit. But it has this other element, which is a 2D drawing canvas that you can draw on. And this is super exciting because I'm really excited about the future. Someday somebody's going to make a drawing program in VR that's just for doing 2D artwork and being able to turn your canvas around and scale it and make it small. And imagine if you had all sorts of different pens and pencils and paint, and maybe it even had physics. So as you turned it, the paint would drip and stuff. And it's going to be really exciting. I don't know who's going to make that. Is somebody going to make that out there? Because I don't know how to program. I don't know how to do it. So hopefully somebody does it. Then once you're drawing with your 2D stuff, you can scale it up in VR and make everything, once again, look super epic. Scaling things in VR just makes everything look like, oh my gosh, that actually looks like a real thing. And look how big that is. That's awesome. This is the size of a building. So here we are in AnimVR. AnimVR is an animation program, much like Quill. So Quill has an animated sort of element to it, and AnimVR does too as well. But AnimVR has this really cool toolkit that integrates with Unity. And what that means is that much like the Tilt Brush toolkit, you draw in one program and it translates and comes across right into Unity. Super easy. And so what I like to use AnimVR for is, once again, kind of like a Previz sort of thing, but you can actually bring in models and images And when you save your file, you save it to a stage file, and that whole file with those images and the meshes that you're using, it all comes across into Unity. So you can compose in VR, and you can kind of like, figure out how things are going to be while you have the headset on. And you can kind of get a real sense of like how they relate to each other. Like, does this block this thing? Does this go over here? It works really well, and you bring it all into Unity, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally designed in VR, and that's how it looks in VR. So really exciting kind of workflow for that. So, and hey, speaking of Unity, so here we are in Unity, and I'm going to swap out the look of this tilt brush file by dragging that little KingSpray file that I made before. I'm going to actually just drop it. This was a mistake that I was like, oh my God, I can actually just do this? Okay. You can just drop it on top of the tilt brush file, and it'll totally change the look of that. So I was really excited about the texture of how this looked by swapping in this file. So if you open up the tilt brush image file, you can get in there and see how they make their brushes in tilt brush. So here I've opened it up in Photoshop, and I thought, I wonder if I replace those with my own images, what would that look like? So yeah, so I made my own little image file, then made a material in Unity, and then apply that to the tilt brush file that I drew in tilt brush, and it instantly changes the look. So it's cool. It has the color information from tilt brush, so you can use tilt brush to draw in, and knowing that you can change the look of it later. So that's really exciting. So think about that for a minute, of all the different things you could do. So here we are back in Unity. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of turn on the elements. I've already kind of designed and laid out the look of this art piece. And for this video here, I'm just kind of turning things on or off, basically like a set, because we're going to be in there. We're going to fly around in it. So I'm just kind of adding in the elements that I made earlier. So here are the KingSpray files that I made. They're just little PNG files with a transparency on them, and they're bringing them in. And here's the Quill files that I did earlier. So bring those in, add those into the scene. And yeah, so we're just kind of slowly adding stuff in here, building up the scene. So the key is to always kind of keep in mind that you're working dimensionally. Once again, you're surrounded by this. We're going to be inside this. I know this. I'm going to scale this up to huge proportions, and I'm going to be flying through it. And so I want to make sure all my angles are covered and whatnot. Here's the medium file that I did before. It comes in all nice and painted. So yeah, just turning on other things. And yeah, so making sure there's lots of things to look at while I fly around and explore this paintscape. And that's really the exciting part of it, like seeing like, oh yeah, what's in here? What is that thing? We can see there's kind of some nice textures going with all the different layers and whatnot. Here's the tilt brush file being brought in. And yeah, so we render this out. We save it out. I should say we build it. It's not a render. It actually gets built. And it becomes this interactive thing. So we can fly around inside here. And yeah, the scale of the stuff is, it's huge. It's huge. It doesn't show that well on this little 2D video. But I made a little camera that I can hold my hand inside VR, and I can fly around and take pictures of really interesting compositions and stuff. So that to me is really exciting about kind of discovering all this sort of hidden compositions and things with the abstract nature of the artwork. So yeah, it's very exciting to work in VR. So I say go work in VR and think about all the different ways that you can kind of use it for your projects. If you have any questions or want to follow me, you can follow me on these fine social media sites. Here I am. There's the stuff there. Hopefully we'll do a couple more of these sort of things as I get more specific about solutions that I think maybe artists would be interested in that maybe haven't thought about. Well, I don't know about VR, but oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll use that for that. So I've got a couple ideas for some future videos, I guess we'll call them. Anyway, so yes, thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. This is kind of like a brief overview of kind of my process a little bit for making art in VR. Go make art in VR and then go experience it in VR. Don't just settle for a little 2D video or something. No, you got to actually build something so you can go explore it in VR. All right. Thanks a lot. And I will talk to you all later. Thank you.